The rain fell soft over Galway that early morning when a child's voice broke the silence. Low, fragile, nearly a secret. "Daddy, when you leave." The rest of the sentence the wind carried away. But it was enough to change everything. There was something in that house, something unseen, only felt. And whoever dared to truly listen would understand that behind the smile of a perfect woman and the innocence of a silent girl hid a truth no one was prepared to hear. The following day, the father believed it was merely a child's dream. Except dreams sometimes are screams that adults refuse to understand. And when little Brid began sleeping far too much, time, love, and even reason began crumbling like waves beating against the cold stones of Salt Hill. There are stories born of love, others of guilt. This one was born of silence, and it cost far too dear. Rain streaked down the car windows whilst Brid Chathasai, 7 years old, drew trembling hearts with her finger on the fogged glass. From the front seat, her father, Liam O'Sullivan, hummed absently to an old tune, unaware that the girl watched him with glistening eyes. When the engine fell silent before the grey house in Salt Hill, Brid whispered so quietly it seemed she spoke only to her own reflection. "Daddy, when you go away, my new mammy will give me the medicine again." "She'll save me." Liam did not hear, but that sentence, had it been heard, would have changed everything. The door opened, and Clodagh Byrne, Liam's new wife, appeared wrapped in an impeccable beige coat, her smile ready to perform a rehearsed tenderness. "I've been anxious to see you, little one," she said, leaning down to embrace the girl. Brid remained motionless. The contrast was stark, the perfumed, elegant woman against the damp, frightened child. There was a mute plea in those green eyes, a request the world insisted on ignoring. The house smelt of furniture polish and something vaguely medicinal that Brid had learned not to question. Clodagh's fingers were always cold when they touched her hair, smoothing it down with practiced precision. "You're soaked through, pet. Let's get you warm," she murmured, but her voice carried the flatness of someone reading lines rather than feeling them. Liam kissed his daughter's forehead, his lips lingering a moment too long as though trying to press love deep enough to stay, and then he was gone, the door clicking shut with a finality that made Brid's stomach clench. That night, when Liam left for his shift at the shipyard, Clodagh led the girl to the kitchen. The amber bottle reflected the yellow light of the lamp. "It's the medicine that helps sad girls sleep without bad dreams," she whispered. Brid hesitated, but the memory of her dead mother and the promise that sleeping is the way to see her again conquered the fear. The liquid was bitter, coating her tongue with a chemical sweetness that made her gag. But she swallowed. She always swallowed. Within minutes, the edges of the world softened. The kitchen walls seemed to breathe. Brid's limbs grew impossibly heavy, as though gravity itself had doubled. That's it, love. Just close your eyes, Clodagh said, guiding her up the narrow stairs. The girl's vision blurred, the floral wallpaper melting into watercolor smears, the sound of her own heartbeat loud and distant all at once. She was placed into bed still wearing her damp cardigan. The sheets were cold. Clodagh pulled the duvet up to her chin with mechanical care, then stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the hall light. Her eyes were fixed, cold, calculating something the audience could not yet understand. Brid wanted to call out, to ask why her chest felt so tight, why her breath came shallow and strange. But sleep dragged her down, fast and merciless, into a black void where even dreams could not reach. From the corridor, Clodagh watched. She did not move for a long time. Just stood there, her face unreadable, her fingers drumming lightly against the doorframe. Then she turned, descended the stairs, and poured herself a glass of wine. The rain continued its endless rhythm against the windows. Elsewhere, across the wild stretches of Connemara, Eileen O'Sullivan stirred in her sleep. The old woman woke with a start, her heart pounding for no reason she could name. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the irregular thump beneath her ribs. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones the way she always had, the way she'd felt the night her husband drowned, the way she'd felt when her daughter took fever. It was a mother's instinct that transcended distance and logic. She rose, joints aching, and went to the window. The sea beyond in Spidale was black and restless, white foam catching the moonlight. Dia Lynn, she whispered, God with us. But the prayer felt hollow. She reached for the phone, then hesitated. What would she say? That she felt something? Liam would think her mad. He already thought her paranoid, clinging to old superstitions. Still, she dialed. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Liam's voice, tired but warm. Leave a message. She opened her mouth, then closed it. What words could contain this dread? She hung up without speaking. Morning came too soon. Liam returned from his shift before dawn, exhausted, smelling of engine oil and salt. He pushed open the front door quietly, not wanting to wake anyone. But something made him pause. The house was too still. Not peaceful, still. There was a difference. He walked to the kitchen and froze. The amber bottle sat on the table, half empty. His eyes moved to the clock. 5:47 a.m. Brid should be stirring by now, patting down in her worn slippers, asking for porridge. He climbed the stairs, each step creaking under his weight, and pushed open her bedroom door. She lay there, small and pale beneath the duvet, her chest barely rising. Her face had a waxen quality, her lips faintly blue. "Brid?" His voice cracked. He shook her shoulder gently, then harder. "Brid, wake up, love." Nothing. Panic flared hot in his chest. He scooped her up, so light, too light, and her head lolled against his shoulder. "Clodagh," he roared. "Clodagh, something's wrong." Footsteps, hurried. Clodagh appeared in the doorway, tying her dressing gown, her face a mask of concern. "What is it? What's happened?" "She won't wake up, she's breathing, but Christ, look at her." Clodagh moved closer, her expression shifting through alarm, confusion, concern, all the right emotions, performed flawlessly. She touched Brid's forehead. "She's warm. Perhaps she's just deeply asleep. The medicine..." "The medicine?" Liam's voice was sharp now. "How much did you give her?" "Only what the doctor said. Just a drop to help her rest." He stared at the bottle, then at his wife, then at his daughter's unnaturally slack face. A cold thread of doubt began winding through his gut, but he pushed it away. Clodagh had saved old Flannery from a heart attack last year. She was trained. She knew what she was doing. Didn't she? In the village of Anspidial, an hour's drive along the coast, Eileen O'Sullivan lived in a stone cottage that had weathered a century of Atlantic storms. She was a widow, a black woman in a land still learning to see beyond its own reflection. And she was known amongst the locals as someone who spoke with the dead in the small hours when lightning tore the sky. Some called it superstition. Others called it madness. Eileen called it listening. When the phone finally rang that morning, she was already awake, hands wrapped round a mug of tea gone cold. "Ma'am?" Liam's voice came through, strained. "It's Brid. She's sleeping too much." "But she's grand, the doctor says. Just needs rest." The words landed wrong. Eileen's chest tightened, a sensation like fingernails dragging down her breastbone. How much is too much, a Mac? She slept through the night and half the morning. Clodagh gave her something to help with the nightmares. "What did she give her?" A pause. "I don't know. Something from the chemist. Look, ma'am, I've got to get back to work. I just wanted to let you know." He hung up before she could argue. Eileen sat motionless, the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to the dial tone as though it might whisper secrets. That silence, the one in her grandson's voice, was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of fear swallowed down. She knew it well. She had heard it in her own throat the night she buried her husband, the night she buried her daughter. She stood, bones protesting, and began to dress. The wind outside howled like a living thing, battering the windows, shaking the very foundations. She pulled on her thick wool shawl, the one she'd knitted the winter her son was born, and tied it tight. Her neighbor, Mrs. Daly, watched from across the lane as Eileen climbed into her battered Ford. "Storm's coming, Eileen," she called. "I know," Eileen replied. But she wasn't speaking of the weather. The drive to Salt Hill was brutal. Rain lashed the windscreen faster than the wipers could clear it. The road twisted along cliffs where the sea churned gray and furious below. Eileen's hands gripped the wheel, knuckles pale against her dark skin. She thought of Brid, her sweet, quiet granddaughter who had stopped speaking after her mother died. The child who communicated in whispers and drawings, whose eyes held too much understanding for 7 years. She thought, too, of Clodagh, the new wife. The capable, composed pharmacist who had swept into Liam's life with impeccable timing, offering comfort and competence in equal measure. Too perfect, Eileen had thought from the start. People aren't perfect. They're broken and patched and trying. Perfection is a mask. When she arrived, Clodagh answered the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eileen, what a lovely surprise." Her voice was honey over steel. "Liam didn't mention you were coming." "I didn't mention it to Liam." Clodagh stepped aside, gesturing her in with practiced hospitality. The house was immaculate, surfaces gleaming, cushions plumped, not a thread out of place. It smelt of lavender and something sharper, medicinal. Eileen's nose wrinkled. "Where's Brid?" "Resting on the sofa. The doctor said sleep is the best thing for her grief. I've been giving her a mild sedative, just to ease the nightmares." Poor lamb was waking up screaming. Eileen moved past her without invitation. In the sitting room, Brid lay curled beneath a blanket, her face turned to the cushions. The lamp was on despite the daylight filtering weakly through the curtains. Eileen knelt beside her, touched the child's forehead. Too warm. She lifted the blanket slightly and saw the pallor, the faint sheen of sweat on her upper lip, the way her breathing was too slow, too shallow. "Brid, a store," she whispered. "My treasure." The girl stirred, eyelids fluttering but not opening. Her lips moved, forming soundless words. "She's been like that all morning," Clodagh said from the doorway, arms crossed. "I called the surgery. They said it's normal for children in mourning." Eileen turned slowly, her gaze hard. "I lost a son to war and a daughter to fever. But this child isn't mourning. She's fading." The air between them crystallized. For a moment, something flickered in Clodagh's expression. Annoyance, perhaps, or contempt, before the mask of concern slid back into place. "I understand you're worried, Eileen, but I'm a trained professional. I know what I'm doing." "Do you?" Eileen rose to her feet, joints creaking. She was smaller than Clodagh, older, worn by life. But there was a gravity to her, a weight of lived truth that made the younger woman falter. "Because from where I stand, you're putting a child to sleep like she's a problem to be solved. I'm helping her heal. By silencing her?" Clodagh's jaw tightened. "I think you should go." Eileen didn't argue. She had learned long ago that arguments with people who wore masks were futile. Instead, she bent and kissed Breed's forehead, then straightened and made for the door. As she passed the armchair, she noticed it. Finn, the tatty stuffed bear Brid had carried everywhere since birth. Its brown fur was matted, one eye loose and around its neck. There was a stain, yellowish, faint, but unmistakable. Without a word, Eileen palmed the bear, tucking it inside her large handbag as she adjusted her shawl. Clodagh, busy holding the front door open with impatient courtesy, didn't notice. "Drive safe," Clodagh said, her tone final. Eileen paused on the threshold, looked back. "You know what they say about people who sleep too much?" "What's that?" "They're not resting, they're escaping." She left Clodagh standing there, pale and rigid, and climbed into her car. The engine coughed to life. As she pulled away, the first crack of thunder rolled across the bay. She glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Clodagh watching from the window, motionless, her face a white oval behind the glass. Eileen drove straight to Galway City, to the narrow street where an old friend kept a chemist shop long past retirement. Padraig O'Brien was 80 if he was a day, hunched and wheezing, but his mind was sharp as ever. "Eileen O'Sullivan," he said when she pushed through the door, bell jingling. "It's been an age. I need your help, Padraig." She laid the bear on the counter. He frowned, adjusted his glasses, and examined it under the light. "What am I looking for?" "I don't know. Something wrong." He took a cotton swab, dampened it, and rubbed it carefully across the stain on the bear's neck. Then he disappeared into the back room. Eileen waited, heart thudding. Outside, the rain began in earnest, drumming against the shop front. When Padraig returned, his face was grave. Where did you get this? My granddaughter's toy. He set down a glass slide, gestured for her to look through the microscope. See that? Traces of diazepam. It's a sedative, Eileen. Prescribed for adults with severe anxiety. Not children. Never children. The world tilted. Eileen gripped the counter. You're certain? As certain as science allows. This isn't accidental contamination. This is intent. Her throat closed. Intent. The word hung in the air like smoke. She thought of Brid's pale face, Clodagh's cold smile, the too clean house, the lamp burning in daylight. Intent. What do I do? She whispered. You go to the Gardaí. Now. But Eileen knew her son, knew his pride, his stubbornness, his desperate need to believe he'd finally built something good after so much loss. He wouldn't listen. Not yet. Not without proof he couldn't deny. She thanked Padraig, tucked the bear back into her bag, and walked out into the storm. Thunder cracked overhead, and she thought of all the dead she'd spoken to over the years. None of them had warnings like this. None of them had time. She climbed into her car and sat for a long moment, engine idling, rain battering the roof. Then she dialed Liam's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Ma'am, I can't talk now. Listen to me, I'm a hack. Listen, that woman is hurting your child. Silence. Then, cold and clipped. I'll call you back. He hung up. Eileen stared at the phone, feeling the distance between them yawn wide as the sea. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and wept, not for herself, but for the little girl who had no one left to hear her whisper in the rain. The result of the test was devastating. Eileen sat in Padraig's cramped back room, the printed analysis trembling in her weathered hands. Diazepam, 5 milligrams per milliliter detected in the fabric fibers. The words swam before her eyes, clinical and cold, spelling out a truth she'd felt in her bones but prayed wasn't real. This isn't an error, Eileen, Padraig said quietly, removing his spectacles to clean them, a nervous habit she'd known for 40 years. This is deliberate. Someone has been medicating that child regularly enough that it's saturated her belongings. Eileen's jaw tightened. She folded the paper with shaking hands and tucked it into her handbag alongside the bear. I need to tell Liam. You need to tell the Gardaí. My son first, he deserves to hear it from me. She drove to the shipyard through sheets of rain that turned the world gray and indistinct. The massive cranes loomed like prehistoric creatures against the bruised sky. She found Liam in the workshop, stripped to his vest despite the cold, welding sparks cascading around him like furious stars. When he saw her, his face hardened. Ma'am, what are you doing here? We need to talk, now. set down the torch, pulled off his gloves with sharp, angry movements. If this is about Clodagh again, it's about your daughter. Eileen thrust the paper at him. Read it. Liam scanned the document, his expression shifting from irritation to confusion to something darker. Where did you get this? From Brid's toy, the one she sleeps with every night. Padraig tested it. That woman is drugging your child, Liam, deliberately. His face flushed. You had no right. No right? Eileen's voice rose, echoing off the metal walls. I have every right. That's my granddaughter lying unconscious in your house whilst you work yourself blind and pretend everything's grand. Clodagh is helping her. Brid was having nightmares every night, screaming for her mother. The doctor said, What doctor? Did you speak to them yourself? Or did your perfect wife tell you what they said? Liam's hands clenched into fists. Around them, other workers had stopped to watch, but he didn't notice. You never liked her. From the start, you've been looking for reasons to. She saved Flannery from a heart attack, I know. Eileen stepped closer, her voice dropping to something fierce and desperate. But saving someone once doesn't give you permission to poison someone else slowly. Wake up, Mac, before it's too late. Get out. His voice was flat, final. Go home, ma'am. I mean it. She stared at him, this man she'd birthed and raised who'd grown stubborn as stone, and saw in his eyes not anger but fear. Fear that she was right. Fear of what that would mean. Fear of facing another loss after barely surviving the last. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind her, she heard the torch ignite again, the hiss of metal being fused back together. Some breaks, she thought, couldn't be welded. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. He lay beside Clodagh in the dark, listening to her measured breathing, and thought about his mother's words, about the paper with its damning numbers, about Brid's pale face, and the way she'd started sleeping through entire days. At midnight, he rose quietly and went downstairs. The amber bottle sat on the kitchen counter where Clodagh always left it. He picked it up, tilted it toward the light. The label read, Diazepam $2 million. Take 1 tablet as needed for anxiety. Patient, Clodagh Byrne. His stomach dropped. The prescription was in her name. But if she was giving it to Brid... He set the bottle down with shaking hands and backed away as though it might bite him. Then, moving with sudden decision, he went to the cupboard under the stairs where he kept old tools and equipment. Buried beneath boxes was a small security camera he'd bought years ago when there'd been break-ins along the road. He'd never installed it. Tonight he would. Working quickly and quietly, he positioned the tiny camera on top of the kitchen cupboard, angled to capture the table and counter. He downloaded the app to his mobile, tested it. The feed came through grainy but clear enough. His heart hammered as he deleted the browser history and returned everything to its place. Just to prove Ma'am wrong, he whispered to himself. But even he didn't believe it. The next 3 days crawled past. Liam went to work, came home, kissed his daughter's forehead as she lay sleeping, and felt his world tilting on its axis. He checked the camera feed obsessively, watching Clodagh move through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, preparing meals, tidying, talking on the phone. Nothing unusual, nothing damning. Then, on Thursday evening, whilst Liam was at the shipyard finishing a late job, he checked his mobile during a break. The timestamp read 1947. On the screen, Clodagh entered the kitchen with Brid, the girl rubbing her eyes, stumbling slightly. She was already in her nightdress, though it wasn't yet 8 o'clock. "Sit down, pet," Clodagh said, her voice tinny through the phone speaker. Brid climbed onto the chair. Clodagh opened the amber bottle, tapped out a tablet, and crushed it beneath a spoon. She stirred the powder into a glass of milk. "Drink up now. It'll help you sleep nice and peaceful." Brid took the glass with both hands. Her voice was so quiet Liam had to turn the volume up completely. "Will I see Mammy again tonight?" "Of course you will. The medicine takes you straight to her. Doesn't it feel lovely? Sometimes I can't wake up after. Daddy has to shake me." "That's because you're sleeping so deeply, Angel. It means the medicine is working." The girl drank. Within minutes, her head began to droop. Clodagh lifted her easily, cradling her like a baby, and carried her from view. The kitchen stood empty, the glass abandoned on the table, a white residue clinging to the bottom. Liam's mobile slipped from his hand and clattered onto the concrete floor. Around him, the sounds of the shipyard, the clang of metal, the shouts of men, the grinding of machinery, faded to nothing. He could hear only his own breathing, ragged and sharp. She'd been giving Brid sedatives, not to help her, to control her, to keep her quiet. His hands shook as he retrieved the phone and rewound the footage, watching it again and again. Each time the horror grew sharper. The casual way Clodagh crushed the tablet, the lie about the doctor, the promise that sleep would bring her mother back. He rang the house. It rang 4 times before Clodagh answered, her voice warm. "Hello, love. Finished early? Is Brid awake?" His voice came out strangled. "No, she's fast asleep. Poor thing was exhausted." I gave her some warm milk and she went straight down. Warm milk. The lie sat between them like a living thing. I'm coming home, he said. There's no need to rush, take your time. I've made dinner, it'll keep. I said I'm coming home. A pause. Then, quieter, with something new in her tone, something that might have been amusement or might have been menace. Drive safely, Liam. The roads are terrible tonight. He hung up and ran to his car, the rain already soaking through his shirt. The drive back to Salt Hill took 20 minutes but felt like hours. His mind raced, trying to reconcile the woman he'd married with the woman on that screen. Clodagh, who volunteered at the church. Clodagh, who'd nursed old Flannery back to health. Clodagh, who'd held him when he wept for his dead wife. How could those hands crush tablets meant for her into his daughter's milk? When he burst through the front door, Clodagh was in the sitting room, a book open on her lap, the picture of domestic tranquility. She looked up, surprised. That was quick. Where's Brid? Upstairs, sleeping, I told you. He took the stairs 2 at a time. His daughter's room was dark, save for the nightlight shaped like a moon. She lay on her side, one arm flung over the edge of the bed, her breathing so slow it seemed she might stop altogether. He shook her gently. Brid, wake up. Nothing. He shook harder. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Panic clawed at his throat. He scooped her up. She was like a rag doll, boneless, and carried her downstairs. Clodagh stood at the bottom, blocking his path. What are you doing? Taking her to hospital. She's fine, Liam. She's just sleeping. She's not waking up. His voice cracked. How much did you give her? The usual dose. Don't lie to me. He roared it, and Clodagh flinched. I know what you've been doing. I've seen it. Her face went very still, not guilty, not ashamed, just calculating, as though weighing her options, deciding which mask to wear. Finally, she smiled. It was a terrible smile, empty of everything but cold satisfaction. Then you know I've been doing what you were too weak to do. I've been giving her peace. The words hit him like a fist. He stared at this woman, this stranger, and saw clearly for the first time. She didn't love Brid. She'd never loved Brid. The child was a problem to be managed, a complication to be smoothed away. Get out of my way, he said quietly. For a moment he thought she might refuse. Then she stepped aside, her smile never faltering. Go ahead, but they'll want to know why it took you so long to notice. He carried his daughter out into the storm. University Hospital Galway blazed with fluorescent light against the black night. Liam burst through the emergency entrance cradling Brid, rain streaming from his hair, his boots leaving wet prints across the linoleum. "Help! My daughter, she won't wake up!" Nurses descended immediately, efficient and quick. They took her from his arms. He didn't want to let go, but they prized his fingers loose and laid her on a gurney. Questions came rapid fire. How old? Any medical conditions? What did she ingest? When did this start? Diazepam. He choked out. She's been given diazepam. I don't know how much. I don't know for how long. The nurses exchanged glances. One disappeared with the gurney whilst another guided Liam to a plastic chair. A doctor will be with you shortly, Mr. O'Sullivan. Liam O'Sullivan. Please, is she going to be all right? They're taking care of her now. Just wait here. Wait. As though waiting were something he could do whilst his daughter lay unconscious somewhere beyond those swinging doors. He pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to stop the spinning in his head. This was his fault. All of it. He'd brought Clodagh into their lives. He'd trusted her. He'd ignored his mother's warnings because it was easier than facing the truth. An hour crawled past. Then 2. At some point, a Garda arrived, a young woman with kind eyes who asked gentle questions and took notes. Liam told her everything, the bottle, the camera footage, the way Brid had been sleeping more and more. She listened without judgment, though her jaw tightened. "We'll need to see that footage," she said, "and we'll be speaking with your wife. She's not—" He stopped. What was she? Not innocent, certainly, but not quite a monster either. Something in between. Something worse for being so ordinary. She thought she was helping. The Garda's expression suggested she'd heard that excuse before. Finally, Dr. Tian Darcy emerged, a tall man with tired eyes and silver threading his dark hair. "Mr. O'Sullivan?" Liam shot to his feet. "How is she?" "Stable. We've given her activated charcoal and fluids. Her vital signs are improving, but—" He paused, consulting his notes. The level of benzodiazepines in her system suggests this wasn't a one-time occurrence. How long has she been taking diazepam? I don't know. Weeks, maybe. My wife was giving it to her. I didn't know. The doctor's expression remained neutral, but Liam saw the judgment there. What kind of father doesn't notice his child being drugged? Can I see her? Soon. She's still very drowsy. We want to monitor her a bit longer. Dr. Darcy hesitated, then added, Mr. O'Sullivan, the Tuzla Child Protection Service will need to be contacted. It's a serious matter. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. I know it is. He sank back into the chair after the doctor left and pulled out his mobile. 12 missed calls from Clodagh, 6 voicemails. He deleted them all without listening. Then he rang his mother. She answered on the first ring, her voice thick with sleep. Liam? You were right, ma'am. You were right about everything. Silence. Then soft. Where's Brid? Hospital. She's going to be all right, but I need... His voice broke. I need you to forgive me. For not listening. For being so bloody stupid. Oh, a mahak. He could hear her crying. There's nothing to forgive. Just bring my girl home safe. They talked for 20 minutes, her words a balm over the raw wound of his guilt. When he finally hung up, he felt marginally more human. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Clodagh. I've contacted Tuzla myself. Told them you've been unstable since your first wife died, that you've been neglecting Brid. They'll be investigating you. Ice flooded his veins. He read it again, disbelieving. She'd reported him, preemptively, to make herself look innocent, to cast doubt on anything he might say. Another text. I only wanted to help that child. If you'd been a better father, she wouldn't have needed my help. He wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, he forwarded both messages to the Garda who'd interviewed him, then blocked Clodagh's number. Let her lies unravel. Let the truth speak. At dawn, he was finally allowed to see Brid. She was in a bed in the children's ward, an IV trailing from her small hand, monitors beeping softly. Her eyes were open, barely, and when she saw him, she tried to smile. Daddy. He took her hand, careful of the cannula, and pressed it to his cheek. I'm here, love. I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Where's Mammy Clodagh? The question pierced him, even now after everything the child asked for her. Because children forgive, because children want to believe the adults in their lives are good. She's not coming, sweetheart. It's just us now. Brid's eyes welled with tears. Did I do something wrong? No. He leaned close, kissed her forehead. No, Angel. You did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. She fell back asleep, her breathing steadier now. He sat beside her, holding her hand, and thought about all the ways love can twist into something unrecognizable. Clodagh had believed she was fixing a broken child, that if she could just make Brid sleep deeply enough, the grief would pass, the nightmares would end, and they could all move forward into the tidy life she'd envisioned. But grief doesn't work that way. It isn't something to be medicated into silence. It's something to be sat with, to be held, to be allowed to exist until it transforms into something bearable. He'd failed to understand that, and his daughter had paid the price. Across the city, in the stone cottage in Unspedial, Eileen woke with a start, her chest tight and painful. She pressed a hand over her heart, feeling the irregular rhythm beneath her ribs. Too fast, then too slow, then fluttering like a bird trapped behind glass. Not yet, she whispered to whatever force was pulling at her. Not until I know she's safe. She reached for the phone on her bedside table, but her arm felt heavy, uncooperative. The phone tumbled to the floor with a clatter. She tried to call out for Mrs. Daly next door, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. The pain in her chest bloomed into something vast and consuming. She thought of Brid, of Liam, of all the things she'd wanted to say and hadn't. The room tilted and she felt herself falling, though she was already lying down. Her last thought was of the sea, the way it sounded against the rocks, eternal and indifferent, washing everything clean. Back at the hospital, Liam's phone rang. An unfamiliar number. He answered, stepping into the corridor. Hello? Mr. O'Sullivan? This is Dr. Awif Brennan from Inspidial Clinic. I'm afraid there's been an incident involving your mother. The world stopped. What kind of incident? She's had a cardiac episode. Her neighbor found her this morning. We've stabilized her, but she's asking for you. He looked back at Brid, sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. Then at the long corridor stretching toward the exit. Two people he loved, both in crisis, pulling him in different directions. I'm on my way, he said, though he had no idea how he'd manage it. When Dr. Darcy returned, Liam explained the situation. The doctor's face was sympathetic. Go. We'll watch over your daughter. She's out of danger now. What if she wakes and I'm not here? Then we'll tell her you'll be back soon. Family is important, Mr. O'Sullivan. She'll understand. Liam bent over Brid one more time, kissed her hair, inhaled the scent of her, shampoo and sleep and something intrinsically her. I love you, he whispered, more than anything in this world. Then he ran. The drive to Unspedial was a blur of rain and gray road. When he reached the clinic, his mother was in a narrow bed, oxygen tubes in her nose, looking impossibly small. But her eyes were sharp when they found his. You came. Of course I came. He took her hand, the skin papery, the bones prominent, and felt how fragile she'd become. Ma'am, I'm so sorry for everything. She shook her head slightly. You saved her. That's all that matters. Because of you. If you hadn't pushed... Hush now. Her voice was weak but firm. Listen to me, I'm a hack. Love isn't about being right. It's about being willing to see, even when it hurts. He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Is Brid all right? She will be. Eileen smiled, and some of the tension left her face. Good. That's good. Her eyes drifted closed. I'm tired, Liam. Then rest, ma'am. I'll be right here. But even as he said it, he felt her hand relax in his, felt her breathing slow. The monitor's beep shifted to something more erratic. A nurse hurried in, then a doctor, and Liam was gently moved aside as they worked over her. He stood against the wall, watching, and knew, with the awful clarity of hindsight, that his mother had held on just long enough. Just until she knew Brid was safe. Just until she could let go. The corridor of University Hospital Galway was a tunnel of cold light. Liam O'Sullivan walked without feeling the ground beneath his feet. Dr. Cian Darcy held a clipboard and avoided meeting his eyes. Your daughter has no illness that justifies the sedatives in her blood, Mr. O'Sullivan, and this has been occurring for weeks. Liam stood motionless. The sound of a ventilator filled the silence, that noise which announces the world has ended, but the body hasn't yet realized. He'd driven back from Unspidial in a fugue state, his mother's last words echoing, "Love isn't about being right. It's about being willing to see." She'd held on just long enough to know Brid was safe, then slipped away whilst he held her hand, her final breath so quiet he almost missed it. The doctor had called it a merciful passing. Liam called it unbearable. Now, standing in this sterile corridor, he felt the weight of two losses pressing down on him, one already complete, one narrowly avoided. Brid was alive. His mother was gone. The arithmetic of grief didn't balance. Mr. O'Sullivan? Dr. Darcy's voice was gentle. Did you hear what I said? Weeks, Liam repeated dully. You said weeks. The metabolites in her system suggest regular dosing over an extended period. This wasn't occasional. It was systematic. Systematic. The word lodged in his chest like a shard of glass. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, sharp, purposeful. Clodagh appeared, her eyes red-rimmed, makeup smudged. She'd been crying, or wanted him to think she had. Liam, thank God. I've been so worried. How is she? He stared at her as though she were a stranger. Perhaps she always had been. Stable, Dr. Darcy said carefully, his gaze moving between them. We're keeping her for observation. Can I see her? Clodagh stepped forward, but Liam moved to block her path. No. Liam, please, I know you're angry, but I only wanted to help. She wasn't sleeping. She was having nightmares every single night. The crying, the screaming. I couldn't bear to see her suffer like that. The medicine was just to calm her, to give her peace. Peace? His voice was low, dangerous. You were putting her into a chemical coma. That's not, you're twisting it. I'm a trained pharmacist. I knew the dosage. I was careful. You were poisoning my child. The word hung between them like smoke. Clodagh face crumpled. How can you say that? After everything I've done for this family, I saved your life when you were drowning in grief. I gave Britt a home, stability, someone who actually cared. You gave her drugs. His shout echoed off the walls. A nurse looked up from her station, alarmed. Dr. Darcy placed a steadying hand on Liam's shoulder. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in private, the doctor suggested. But Clodagh wasn't finished. You weren't there, Liam. You were always at the shipyard, always working, always avoiding. Someone had to take care of her. Someone had to make the hard choices. The hard choices? He laughed, a bitter sound. You mean deciding how much to sedate a 7-year-old? That's not parenting, Clodagh. That's control. Her expression shifted, something cold sliding behind her eyes. Maybe. But it worked, didn't it? She stopped crying. She stopped asking for her dead mother. She was finally adjusting. She was disappearing. The silence that followed was immense. Even the hospital sounds, the beeps, the distant voices, the squeak of trolley wheels, seemed to fade into nothing. Dr. Darcy cleared his throat. Mrs. O'Sullivan, I think it's best if you leave. The Gardaí will want to speak with you. The Gardaí? Clodagh's voice rose. I haven't done anything wrong. I was caring for a traumatized child. Ask anyone in Salt Hill. I volunteer at the church. I helped old Mr. Flannery when he had his heart attack. I'm respected in this community. Then you'll have no trouble explaining your actions, the doctor said, his tone brooking no argument. Clodagh looked at Liam, her eyes pleading. Tell them I was trying to help. But he couldn't speak, couldn't find words big enough to encompass the betrayal, the anger, the crushing guilt that he'd allowed this to happen under his own roof. She waited another moment, then turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the linoleum. The sound grew fainter, fainter, until it disappeared entirely. Liam sank into a plastic chair, his head in his hands. My mother died this morning. Dr. Darcy sat beside him. I'm very sorry. She tried to warn me, weeks ago. She knew something was wrong, but I didn't listen. I thought she was being paranoid, jealous, interfering. His voice broke. She died knowing I finally believed her. But it was too late. It's not too late for your daughter. Isn't it? Liam looked up, his eyes raw. She's been asking for Clodagh. Even after everything, she still wants her. What does that say about me? That my own child would rather have the woman who drugged her than her useless father. It says she's a child, the doctor said simply. Children attached to their caregivers, even harmful ones. It's survival instinct, not judgment. Liam wanted to believe that, but the shame sat heavy in his gut. Later, when he was finally allowed back into Breed's room, she was awake, propped up on pillows, drawing on a piece of paper a nurse had given her. She looked up when he entered, and her face brightened. "Daddy, you came back." "Of course I did." He kissed her forehead, stroked her hair. "How are you feeling, love?" "Tired, but better." She hesitated, her crayon hovering over the paper. "Where's Mammy Clodagh?" The question was a knife. She's not coming anymore, sweetheart." Brid's lower lip trembled. "Did I make her angry?" "No, Angel, no, you didn't do anything wrong." "Then why won't she visit?" How could he explain? How could he tell a 7-year-old that the woman she'd trusted had been slowly erasing her? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, big ones, and when that happens, things have to change. What kind of mistakes? The kind that hurt people, even when they don't mean to. Brid was quiet for a long moment, her small face serious. Then she said, "Mammy Clodagh told me the medicine would help me see Mammy, my real Mammy in my dreams." Liam's chest constricted. "Did you want to see her?" "Every day." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "But when I took the medicine, I didn't dream at all. I just went away. And when I woke up, I couldn't remember anything, not even Mammy's face." He pulled her into his arms, held her while she cried, and felt his own tears fall into her hair. All those weeks she'd been taking the medicine hoping to connect with her dead mother, only to be sent into a void. Clodagh had promised heaven and delivered oblivion. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have protected you. I should have seen." "It's okay, Daddy." "It's not okay, but I'm going to do better, I promise." She pulled back, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Is Nana Eileen coming to visit?" The second knife, deeper than the first. He took a shaky breath. "Nana Eileen." "She got very sick, love." Her heart stopped working. Brid's eyes widened. "Is she with Mammy now?" "Yes." "I think she is." "Will I see her again?" "Someday, but not for a very, very long time." She nodded, processing this with the strange acceptance of children who haven't yet learned that death is permanent. "Can I draw her a picture, so she knows I'm thinking of her?" "That's a lovely idea." He watched her return to her drawing. A house, a tree, 2 figures holding hands. One tall, one small. grandmother and granddaughter, reunited in crayon. That evening, 2 social workers from Tuzla arrived. They were professional, thorough, and kind. But their questions felt like an interrogation. Where had he been when the medication was administered? Why hadn't he noticed the changes in his daughter? Did he have a history of substance abuse, depression, negligence? He answered honestly, even when the truth made him look like a failure. Because he had failed. There was no point pretending otherwise. "We'll need to complete a full assessment," the older social worker said. "In the meantime, Brid will remain in hospital care. Once she's discharged, we'll discuss next steps." "Next steps?" Panic flared. "You're not taking her from me?" "We're not taking her anywhere, Mr. O'Sullivan. We're ensuring her safety. That's our job." After they left, Liam stood at the window overlooking the car park, watching rain batter the pavement. He thought about his mother, about Clodagh, about all the ways love could be mistaken for something else. Clodagh had believed she was fixing a problem, that if she could just make Brid compliant, quiet, manageable, then they could be a proper family. She'd confuse silence with peace, control with care, and he'd let her. His mobile buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Clodagh. I've made a formal complaint to Tuzla about your neglect." "I've documented everything. Your absences, your drinking after your wife died, the way Brid was always unkempt and hungry when I met you. They'll see the truth. That I was trying to save that child from you." He read it twice, 3 times, feeling the cold fury build. She was rewriting history, casting herself as savior and him as villain. And the worst part? Some of it was true. He had been absent. He had drunk too much in those first months after his wife's death. He had let Brid's hair go uncombed, her clothes unwashed because he could barely function himself. But he'd never drugged her, never silenced her, never convinced her that oblivion was the same as peace. He typed a reply. "The truth will come out, all of it, and when it does, you'll have to live with what you've done." He didn't send it. Instead, he deleted it and pocketed his phone. Clodagh would face consequences, legal, professional, social. She'd already lost her position at the pharmacy, pending investigation. Her reputation in Salt Hill was in tatters. The community that had once admired her efficiency now whispered about her coldness. But none of that would bring his mother back. None of it would erase the weeks Brid had spent in that drugged haze. He returned to his daughter's bedside and took her small hand in his. She was asleep again, her breathing steady and natural. No sedatives, no chemical fog. just the ordinary sleep of a tired child. "I'm listening now," he whispered. "I swear to you I'm listening." The village of Unspedial woke to news spreading like wildfire through the local radio stations. Respected Galway pharmacist under investigation for sedating child. The story had everything small communities thrived on: scandal, betrayal, a vulnerable child, a trusted professional fallen from grace. Clodagh Byrne walked through Salt Hill with her shoulders straight and her head high, but she felt the weight of every glance, every whispered conversation that stopped when she approached. The greengrocer who'd always saved her the best vegetables now served her without meeting her eyes. The postman left her mail on the doorstep instead of knocking. Even Father Brennan, when she'd tried to attend Mass, had suggested perhaps a period of reflection at home might be best. She'd been excommunicated without trial, convicted in the court of public opinion before the legal system had even begun its work. At the house in Salt Hill, the house that felt vast and empty now, she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold, staring at the amber bottle she'd placed in the center. The label mocked her. Take 1 tablet as needed for anxiety. She'd been anxious. Constantly. About being a good stepmother, about making Brid love her, about creating the perfect family to replace the one Liam had lost. Every time the child had cried for her dead mother, Clodagh had felt it as a personal failure. If she could just make Brid stop grieving, stop remembering, stop yearning for someone who could never return, then maybe they could all move forward. The medicine had seemed like mercy. Now, looking back through the lens of consequences, she saw it differently. Not mercy. Control. The erasure of an inconvenient truth. That you cannot drug grief away any more than you can drug away love. Her mobile rang. Her solicitor, calling for the 3rd time that day. She let it go to voicemail. What was there to say? She'd done what she'd done. The footage existed. The blood tests existed. Her own words, spoken so confidently to the investigators, existed. I gave her a mild sedative to help with her adjustment. Any competent medical professional would have done the same. Except they wouldn't have. That was becoming increasingly clear. Across the city, Liam sat in a small office at the Garda station, giving his statement for the 2nd time. The detective, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a Connemara accent, listened without interruption as he walked through everything: the camera footage, his mother's warnings, the test results from Brid's stuffed bear. "And your wife, Mrs. Byrne, she never showed remorse?" the detective asked. "She thinks she was helping." Liam's voice was hoarse from talking. Even now, I think she genuinely believes she was doing the right thing. That makes it worse, doesn't it? The ones who justify their cruelty as kindness. He nodded. It did make it worse. Because at least with deliberate malice you could understand the motivation. But Clodagh actions came from a twisted compassion, a belief that she knew better than a child what that child needed. "We'll be pressing charges," the detective said. Administering a noxious substance to a minor, child endangerment, possibly more depending on what else we uncover. Her pharmacy license will be revoked pending investigation. "And me?" Liam asked quietly. "Will I be charged?" The detective studied him. "That's up to the DPP. But between us? You're a victim here too. She deceived you as much as she harmed your daughter." He didn't feel like a victim. Victims were blameless. He'd closed his eyes, stopped his ears, chosen the easier path of denial. That made him complicit. After the interview, he drove to the hospital. Brid had been moved to a regular ward, no longer needing intensive monitoring. She was sitting up when he arrived, coloring with a set of markers a nurse had brought her. "Daddy!" She held up her picture, a rainbow over the sea. "Look what I made." "It's beautiful, love." He kissed her forehead. "How are you feeling?" "My tummy hurts a bit." "And I keep having funny dreams." "What kind of dreams?" "Not bad ones, just strange. Like everything's moving too fast and I can't keep up." She set down her marker. "The doctor says it's because the medicine is leaving my body. Is that good?" "Very good. That means you're getting better." "Will I have to take medicine again?" "No, sweetheart, no more medicine." She looked relieved. "Good. I didn't like it. It made me feel far away from everything, even from myself." The simple honesty of it broke his heart. Children had a way of cutting through complexity to the essential truth. The drugs hadn't helped her. They'd isolated her, made her a ghost in her own life. "Daddy?" Her voice was small. "Do you think Mammy Clodagh is sad?" The question caught him off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Because she wanted me to love her, I could tell. But I couldn't love her the way she wanted. I still missed my real Mammy too much." Liam sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes adults make mistakes because they want something so badly they stop thinking clearly. I think Mammy Clodagh wanted to be loved, yes. But love isn't something you can force. It grows on its own if you give it time and space. Like a garden. Exactly like a garden. Brid nodded, processing this. Then, "I'm sad about Nana Eileen." "Me too, love, me too. She came to visit me once." Do you remember? And she picked up Finn. She pointed to the stuffed bear now sitting on the windowsill returned from the evidence locker. She held him really tight, like she was saying goodbye. Liam's throat closed. His mother had known, even then, what was at stake. Had taken the bear to prove her suspicions. Had died knowing she'd saved her granddaughter, even at the cost of her own health. Nana loved you very much, he managed. I know. Brid's eyes filled with tears. I wish I could tell her thank you. You can in here. He touched her chest over her heart. She'll hear you. That evening, a voice message arrived on Liam's phone. He almost deleted it, assuming it was another reporter or concerned neighbor, but the number looked vaguely familiar. He pressed play. Static. Then his mother's voice, weak, raspy, recorded days before her death. Liam, I'm Hack. If you're hearing this, it means I couldn't say it to your face. Listen to me now, because this is important. Love is not what calms, it's what listens. And when we don't listen, love goes silent forever. Don't let that happen to you and Brid. Don't let the noise of the world drown out her voice. Promise me. The message ended. He played it again, and again. His mother's final gift. A reminder that love wasn't about fixing, controlling, or perfecting. It was about bearing witness. About being present even, especially, when things were hard. He saved the message, knowing he'd need to hear it again in the years to come. The next morning, Clodagh appeared at the hospital. Security stopped her at the entrance, as per the protection order, but she stood in the car park holding a wrapped package. Liam saw her from the window and went down against his better judgment. They stood 10 feet apart, the drizzle misting between them. I brought Brid her books, Clodagh said, holding out the package, the ones she liked. I thought she might want them. He took the package without comment. Liam. Her voice cracked. I need you to understand. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I know. Then why are you doing this? The charges, the investigation, the restraining order? I was caring for her. You were silencing her. He kept his voice level, though anger simmered beneath. Every time she cried for her mother, you gave her drugs. Every time she needed comfort, you gave her oblivion. That's not care, Clodagh. That's erasure. I was helping her move on. Children don't move on. They integrate, they grow around their grief. But you wouldn't let her do that. You wanted a child who fit into your perfect life, and when the real breed didn't cooperate, you tried to chemically alter her into someone who would. Clodagh's face crumpled. I just wanted to be a good mother. Then you should have asked what she needed instead of deciding for her. She stared at him, tears streaming, and he saw something shift behind her eyes, a crack in the armor of justification. For the first time, she looked genuinely horrified at herself. I didn't... She stopped, started again. I didn't see it that way. I thought I was... God, Liam, what have I done? You hurt my daughter. Systematically, for weeks. I know. I know that now. She pressed a hand to her mouth, her shoulders shaking. But at the time, it felt like compassion. Like I was sparing her pain. You were sparing yourself from having to deal with a grieving child. The truth of it hung between them. Clodagh made no attempt to deny it. She just stood there, diminished, soaked by the rain, and wept. The bear, she said eventually. Finn, can I see him? Just once? Liam hesitated, then nodded. He went back inside, retrieved the bear from Brid's room, and brought it down. He placed it in Clodagh's hands. She held it the way someone holds a relic, carefully, reverently. Her fingers traced the yellow stain around its neck, the evidence of her crime absorbed into fibers. I used to tuck this in with her every night, she whispered. I thought I was helping her sleep peacefully. You were putting her into a coma. I see that now. She pressed the bear to her chest, her tears soaking into its fur. I see everything now, and I can't undo it. No, Liam said quietly. You can't. She handed the bear back, her hands trembling. Tell Brid, tell her I'm sorry, even if she never forgives me. Tell her I'm sorry. He didn't promise, couldn't promise, because he wasn't sure forgiveness was his to grant on his daughter's behalf. Instead, he just nodded and turned away. As he walked back into the hospital, he heard her calling after him. Liam, what happens now? He stopped, looked back. Now you live with what you've done, same as the rest of us. Liam arrived at the hospital at dawn, his eyes swollen from a sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling of his mother's empty cottage. He'd driven to Enspidial after leaving Clodagh in the car park, needing to feel close to Eileen one last time before the funeral. The house still smelt of her, tea and wool and the faint lavender sachets she kept in every drawer. He'd sat in her chair by the window, watching the sea turn from black to gray to silver as morning broke, and wept until he had nothing left. Now, pushing open the door to Brid's room, he found her awake, sitting up in bed with her legs crossed, humming tunelessly to herself. When she saw him, her face brightened despite the pallor still clinging to her cheeks. Daddy, you're here early. Couldn't sleep, love? He kissed her forehead, settled into the chair beside her bed. How are you feeling this morning? Better. My head doesn't feel fuzzy anymore, and I had a dream. His chest tightened. What kind of dream? A good one. I saw Nana Eileen. She was standing by the sea, and the water was all sparkly like someone had put diamonds in it. She told me something. Liam's throat constricted. What did she tell you? Breed's eyes, those clear green eyes that had seen too much, fixed on his. She said I don't need medicine to see Mammy anymore. She said all I have to do is close my eyes and listen to the sea, because Mammy's voice is in the waves and Nana's voice is there too now, and they'll always be there, even when I can't see them. Tears spilled down his cheeks before he could stop them. He pulled her into his arms, held her tight, and sobbed into her hair. She's right, Angel. She's absolutely right. Don't cry, Daddy. Brid's small hand patted his back. It's okay. They're not really gone. They're just somewhere else. Somewhere I can still feel them. The wisdom of children. The brutal, beautiful honesty of grief untainted by adult complications. She understood what he was still learning. That love doesn't end with death. It transforms. Becomes memory. Becomes presence. Becomes the voice in the waves. They sat like that for a long time, father and daughter, holding each other whilst the hospital woke around them. Eventually, a nurse brought breakfast, porridge and toast and juice, and Brid ate with more appetite than she'd shown in days. The drugs were leaving her system. She was coming back. Daddy? She set down her spoon. When can I go home? Soon, love. The doctors want to make sure you're completely well first. And then what happens? He didn't have an easy answer. The house in Salt Hill felt contaminated now, every room holding shadows of what had occurred there. I'm not sure yet. We might move. Find somewhere new, just the two of us. What about Mammy Clodagh? The question still hurt even though he'd expected it. She won't be living with us anymore. Because of the medicine? Yes. Brid was quiet for a moment, pushing porridge around her bowl. I know she did something bad. The nurses whisper about it when they think I'm asleep. But I don't think she meant to be mean. I think she was just confused. The child's capacity for empathy staggered him. After everything Clodagh had done, Brid could still find compassion for her. You're very kind, sweetheart. Nana Eileen always said being angry takes more energy than being kind, and I'm too tired to be angry. Liam smiled despite his tears. Your Nana was a wise woman. The wisest. Brid looked up at him, suddenly serious. Will there be a funeral? For Nana? Yes. Tomorrow. Can I go? He hesitated. She was still weak, still recovering. But he remembered his mother's words. Listen to what the child needs. If the doctors say you're well enough, then yes, you can go. Relief flooded her face. Good. I want to say goodbye properly, not just in a dream. The funeral took place 2 days later, in the small stone church overlooking the bay at Unspidal. The sky was gray and heavy with unshed rain, the wind sharp enough to cut. Liam walked into the church with Breed beside him, her small hand gripped tight in his. She wore the black dress they'd bought the day before, too big in the shoulders, but there hadn't been time for alterations. The church was packed. Neighbors, friends, people Eileen had helped over the decades with her herbal remedies and blunt advice. Mrs. Daly from next door wept openly in the front pew. Padraig, the old pharmacist, sat hunched and silent, his hands folded over his walking stick. And in the back, half hidden by a pillar, stood Clodagh. Liam saw her and felt his jaw tighten. She had no right to be here. No right to mourn the woman whose warnings she'd dismissed, whose granddaughter she'd harmed. But before he could move, Brid tugged his hand. It's okay, Daddy. Let her stay. He looked down at his daughter, stunned. You don't have to. I know. But Nana would have let her stay. She always said church was for everyone, especially the people who felt they didn't deserve to be there. So he said nothing. And Clodagh remained, a ghost at the edges, her face pale and drawn. The service was simple. Father Brennan spoke of Eileen's strength, her faith, her fierce protection of those she loved. Several people stood to share memories. The time she'd delivered a baby during a storm when the doctor couldn't make it through. The way she'd organized meals for families in crisis. How she'd never turned anyone away from her door. When it came time for Liam to speak, his legs barely carried him to the pulpit. He gripped the edges of the wooden stand and looked out at the sea of faces. My mother, he began, his voice cracking, was the kind of person who saw things others missed. She heard things others ignored. And when she tried to tell us what she saw and heard, I didn't always listen. He paused, swallowing hard. She spent the last weeks of her life trying to protect my daughter from a danger I refused to see. And she succeeded. But it cost her. The stress, the worry, the heartbreak of watching her son choose blindness over truth. It took its toll, and I will carry that for the rest of my life. Tears blurred his vision. He wiped them away roughly. But here's what I've learned. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to hear the hard truths, to listen even when it hurts, to see even when you'd rather look away. My mother taught me that. And though she's gone, her voice will stay with me. In the waves, in the wind, in every moment I choose to truly listen. He stepped down, legs shaking, and returned to his seat. Brid reached up and took his hand, squeezing tight. After the service, they stood by the graveside as Eileen's coffin was lowered into the ground. The wind whipped around them, carrying the salt smell of the sea. Liam threw a handful of earth onto the coffin, the sound of it hitting the wood like a final, terrible punctuation. Brid stepped forward with the drawing she'd made in the hospital. The house, the tree, the two figures holding hands. She folded it carefully and placed it on top of the coffin before the grave was filled. "Goodbye, Nana," she whispered. "Thank you for saving me." As the crowd dispersed, Clodagh approached hesitantly. She stopped several feet away as though afraid to come closer. "Liam, I'm sorry for your loss." He stared at her, this woman who'd been his wife, who'd nearly destroyed his daughter, who now stood before him hollowed out by guilt. "Why are you here?" "Because I owed her. Your mother saw what I couldn't see, and she tried to stop me. I didn't listen. Just like you didn't listen. We both—" Her voice failed. "We both failed her. And Brid." It was the first time she'd truly acknowledged her culpability without qualification. No excuses about good intentions or medical knowledge, just raw admission. "You're right," Liam said quietly. "We both failed. But the difference is, I'm trying to do better. So am I." She looked at Braid, who stood several feet away examining flowers someone had placed on a neighboring grave. "I've resigned from the pharmacy, entered therapy. I'm cooperating fully with the investigation. None of it changes what I did. But I'm trying." "For what it's worth," he said, "I believe you." "I think you genuinely thought you were helping, but intent doesn't erase harm." "I know." She wiped her eyes. Can I give her something? Just a small thing." Liam hesitated, then nodded. Clodagh reached into her bag and pulled out the stuffed bear. Finn. He'd given it back to her in the hospital car park, and now she was returning it. "This belongs with Brid," she said. "Not with me." She held it out. Liam took it, felt the worn fur, saw the faint yellow stain still visible around the neck. Evidence of her crime, but also evidence of his daughter's resilience. Clodagh turned to leave, then paused. "Liam, tell her. Tell her I hope someday she can forgive me. But if she can't, I understand. I'll tell her." He watched her walk away, a solitary figure disappearing into the gray afternoon, and felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but understanding. Clodagh had been broken in her own way, trying to fix others because she couldn't fix herself. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it made her human. That evening, back in his mother's cottage with Brid, Liam found an envelope on the kitchen table. His name in Eileen's handwriting. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside, a single page, dated a week before her death. Mac, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't grieve too long. I've had a good life, longer than many, and full of love. But I need you to hear this one last time. When the truth is too hard to see, listen to what the children say. They know things we've forgotten. They feel things we've learned to ignore. Brid tried to tell you something was wrong. In her silence, in her fear, in the way she shrank into herself. You didn't hear it because you didn't want to. I understand why. Listening means acting, and acting means facing hard truths. But you heard eventually, and you acted. That's what matters. Love her fiercely. Listen to her always. And when the waves crash against the shore, know that I'm there, watching over you both. Your mother, Eileen. Liam folded the letter and pressed it to his chest. From the sitting room, he could hear Brid humming, the same tuneless melody she'd been singing in the hospital. He went to her, found her curled on the sofa with Finn clutched tight. What are you humming, love? A song Nana used to sing. I can't remember the words, but the tune is in my head. He sat beside her, pulled her close. Will you teach it to me? Together they hummed into the gathering darkness, their voices blending with the sound of the sea beyond the window, eternal, unchanging, full of all the voices that had come before and would come after. Love, loss, and the beginning of healing. 6 months later, the house in Salt Hill stood empty. Peeling paint, windows dark, a for sale sign leaning in the overgrown garden. Liam had moved them to a small cottage near Roundstone, far enough from the memories but close enough to the sea that Brid could still hear the waves. It was modest. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smelt of damp on rainy days, a garden overrun with wildflowers, but it was theirs, clean, untainted. The cottage sat at the end of a narrow lane where neighbors were scarce, and the wind carried only the sound of gulls and sheep. Liam had taken a new position at a smaller shipyard, something with regular hours that let him be home when Brid finished school. Money was tighter, life was simpler, but for the first time in years, he could breathe. Brid had started at a new school in September. The teachers knew nothing of what had happened, and Liam intended to keep it that way. She was just Bríd ní Chathasaigh, a quiet girl with red hair and a talent for drawing, who sometimes stared out the window during lessons as though listening to something no one else could hear. She was in therapy twice a week with a kind woman named Dr. Siobhan Moran, who let her draw instead of talk when the words wouldn't come. Slowly, steadily, Bríd was learning to trust again, to sleep without fear, to understand that what had happened wasn't her fault. Some nights, she still woke crying. Not from nightmares, but from grief. For her mother, for her grandmother, for the innocence that had been stolen from her. On those nights, Liam would sit beside her bed and hold her hand until she fell back asleep, singing the wordless tune she'd taught him, the one Eileen used to hum. This particular afternoon, autumn light slanted through the kitchen windows whilst Liam prepared dinner. Bríd sat at the table doing homework, her tongue poking out in concentration as she formed careful letters. The radio played quietly, traditional music, fiddles, and tin whistles winding through the air. "Daddy?" She set down her pencil. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, love." "Do you think Mammy Clodagh is okay?" The question still had the power to surprise him. 6 months on and Bríd still thought of her. Not with longing, more with a child's simple curiosity about the fate of someone who'd once been important. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I haven't heard from her." That wasn't entirely true. He'd received updates through the solicitor handling the divorce. Clodagh had pleaded guilty to all charges, administering a noxious substance, child endangerment. She'd been sentenced to 18 months, suspended, with mandatory psychiatric treatment and 5 years probation. Her pharmacy license had been permanently revoked. She'd moved to Cork, as far from Galway as she could get while staying in Ireland, and was working as a receptionist in a dental surgery. The community had destroyed her reputation more thoroughly than any court ever could. She'd become a cautionary tale, whispered about in pubs and shops, the woman who drugged a child, the monster in respectable clothing. But Liam knew she wasn't a monster. Monsters were easier to understand. Clodagh was something more complicated, a wounded person who'd tried to heal herself by controlling others, who'd confused silence with peace, who genuinely believed she was helping right up until the moment she couldn't deny the harm anymore. "I think," he said carefully, "that she's trying to be better, just like we are." Bríd nodded, satisfied with this answer. She returned to her homework whilst Liam stirred the pot on the stove. Lamb stew, his mother's recipe, made from memory since he'd never thought to write it down. Later that evening, after dinner was eaten and dishes washed, they walked down to the strand. The tide was out, exposing dark rocks covered in seaweed and barnacles. Breed ran ahead, her wellies splashing through shallow pools, whilst Liam followed at a distance, hands in his pockets watching her. She'd grown in the past 6 months. Not just physically, though she had, shooting up 2 inches and needing new trousers, but in some fundamental way. There was a steadiness to her now, a quiet strength that reminded him achingly of his mother. She stopped at the water's edge and picked up a smooth stone, turning it over in her palm. Liam caught up to her. "What have you found?" "A wishing stone. See? It has a line all the way around." She held it up, and sure enough, a white stripe circled the gray rock. "What will you wish for?" She thought for a long moment, her small face serious. "I'm not going to wish. I'm going to say thank you instead." "Thank you for what?" "For everything." She looked up at him, those clear green eyes holding his. "For listening, for saving me, for bringing me here, for being my daddy." His throat closed. He knelt in the wet sand so they were eye level. "Brid, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You're the bravest person I know." "I don't feel brave." "I feel scared lots of times. That's what brave is, love. Being scared but doing the hard thing anyway." She considered this, then nodded. She turned and threw the stone as far as her small arm could manage. It arced through the air and disappeared into the gray water with a soft plop. "There," she said, satisfied. "The sea will keep it safe." They walked back as dusk settled, the sky turning purple and orange over Connemara. At home, Liam tucked her into bed with Finn, the bear that had saved her life, washed clean now but still bearing that faint yellow stain like a scar. "Daddy?" Her voice was sleepy. "Do you think Nana and Mammy are proud of us?" "I know they are. Even though we made mistakes? Especially because we made mistakes and learned from them." She smiled, her eyes already closing. "That's good. That's really good." He kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and stood in the doorway watching her breathe. In, out, natural, unforced. The sound of a child sleeping because she was tired, not because she'd been drugged into oblivion. Downstairs he made tea and sat by the window overlooking the sea. The moon was rising, painting a silver path across the water. He thought about his mother, about his first wife, about all the ways love could manifest and twist and ultimately survive. In the book Brid had been reading, left open on the sofa, a piece of paper stuck out. He pulled it free and unfolded it. A letter, written in Brid's careful script. Dear Daddy, the medicine made me sleep, but it also made me disappear. I couldn't feel anything. Not sad, but not happy either. Just nothing. Sometimes nothing is scarier than something. But now I feel everything again. When I'm sad, I cry. When I'm happy, I laugh. When I miss Mammy and Nana, my chest hurts, but in a good way. Because it means I still love them. You told me love grows like a garden. I think that's true. And I think we're growing a good garden now. It's not perfect. There are weeds and sometimes things don't bloom. But it's real. And real is better than pretend. Thank you for listening when I didn't know how to speak loud enough. Thank you for seeing when I was disappearing. Thank you for bringing me back. I love you. Brid. Liam read it 3 times, tears streaming down his face. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer where he kept his mother's last letter. Evidence. Proof. A record of survival. Outside, the waves continued their eternal rhythm. Crash and retreat. Crash and retreat. The sound his daughter had learned to hear her lost loves in. The sound that would remain long after he and Brid were gone, carrying their voices forward. He went to the window and stood there, looking out at the dark expanse of sea and sky. The cottage was warm behind him, his daughter sleeping safely upstairs, the future uncertain but no longer terrifying. I'm listening now, he whispered to the wind, to his mother, to the ghost of his first wife, to whatever forces had seen fit to give him a second chance. I swear to you, I'm listening. And somewhere in the crash of waves against stone, he heard an answer. Not words, just presence. The kind of love that transcends death and time and all the mistakes that make us human. Some truths arrive too late, and when they do, there's no way to repair what silence has destroyed. Liam learned the hardest way that love isn't about protecting from everything, but about listening to what hurts. How many times have you ignored a cry for help disguised as silence? How many times have you chosen to believe in calm rather than confront the storm? Sometimes it isn't time that separates people. It's the absence of listening. Think about this. What would you do if someone you love most began whispering things no one else seems to hear? Would you have the courage to believe, even without proof? Or would you let fear speak louder than your heart? There are stories that end, but leave echoes, and these echoes remind us that every voice, even the weakest, carries an entire world within it. Not all love heals, but all love that listens saves.